We are back talking vintage sports from the old garden, Nedick's at that, on 48th Street in New York City. The old garden's not there anymore. Nedick's is certainly not there anymore, but our memories survive, and each week we get together with some great historians. The host of the show, or co-host, all of us are hosts in a way, Hal Bock. How are you, Hal?
I'm good, Ralph.
Good. George Case the Third is a regular.
I'm here, too. Good to talk to everybody.
Al Blumkin stops by on a most regular basis.
Thank you, Ralph.
Glad to have you. And today I'm privileged to have Tony De Angelo, my godfather, who's been on these airwaves many, many times, is a terrific podcaster, host, talk show host on the West Coast. I'm out here on the East Coast.
It's the other way around.
Having grown up there. Right. Tony De Angelo, welcome to the airwaves.
I think it's an honor to be with these fine gentlemen.
Aren't they? And it's their honor to be with you, got to say.
Absolutely.
Yes. So here we go. I want to start first with the breaking shoe scandal, breaking news of a shoe scandal right up George Case's alley. George, you sold shoes, recreational shoes. How do you describe it all these years after college?
Okay, well, let me just mention one thing. I'm not involved in this scandal at all. Please understand that. This was coming, I told Ralph, this was coming a long, long time. And when I was first in the athletic shoe business, and I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I had simply sent a letter to Coach John Wooden at UCLA asking him for one of his players to try our new basketball shoe. It was Henry Bibby. I sent the shoes to Henry Bibby. He wound up on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Henry wore Pro Kids for many years while he was playing in the NBA, and that's how innocent it was when I was first in it. And a few years later, I came up with
Henry Bibby $500,000 for that.
It cost me a postage stamp. That's what it cost.
Oh, okay.
But then I came up with the idea that maybe a couple of years later, a college coach's staff might be in the works, and I contacted some coaches, and we decided to develop a staff. They would help us in product development, have sales meetings, and we would supply shoes to the basketball team, and that was it. And it was very low key and a very, very little amount of money. And then today, when I saw the headlines about the scandal and what's going on with Adidas and Nike, and I know there's colleges that are being spent a lot of money by those two companies on product, and it wasn't just product; it was cash. And originally, the money was going to the college basketball coaches. Then the athletic departments got involved, and the donations now, go to the school. So you have a school that's an Adidas school, you have a school that's a Nike school, you have a school that's an Under Armour school. So they supply the product to all the teams of those universities, and then, you get involved. And now when I read this about, the college coaches, assistant coaches directing kids to a certain school because they're getting paid, to me this is just outrageous, and I hope that the scandal, whatever comes out of it, stops the whole process, because to me it's out of control.
Now, George, in your estimation, do you think that out of all the quote-unquote big-time schools now, we have UConn here, which is another story for another time. It's the 500-pound gorilla. It does whatever it wants to the detriment of the state. Again, another story for another time. But do you think every single school or the majority of schools are involved in some sort of a pay-per-play, as you describe it?
Well, you know what, Tony, I don't think that they're all involved. I think there are certain schools that are involved, and they've been there a long time and have been, at the top of the game. Now, UConn, when Calhoun was the coach, and then you have Gino with the women. I'm certain that they were on the staff of whether it be Adidas or Converse or Nike. I'm not sure, but there were, certainly some monetary value there. But I don't think it had anything to do with what's being talked about today with this scandal, with money being directed to high school kids' families to, push that particular player to a certain school. To me, that is just outrageous.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Does this answer the age-old question about college, even high school athletics being semi-pro at this point?
Yeah. Well, you know what, Ralph? I think when somebody asked me that the other day about colleges, my personal opinion is that there are certain schools, whether it be at Division I level in basketball or football or whatever, where some of these players probably should be paid because they're either getting money under the table or there's a certain amount of funds that are being directed to them. The coaches do not want to know about it, but these kids are saying, hey, if the school or the NCAA is making millions off my back, why shouldn't I, make some money on this? And if you start to pay some kids a certain level, then that's one thing. Now, I'm not saying it should be at the Division II, Division III level. It certainly shouldn't, or to the mid-majors. But if those kids, and I don't know how you police it, it's not my bailiwick, it's not my expertise, but I think at some point you're going to have college athletes at the highest level will receive some kind of money.
Well, this is an age-old argument. The major sports, basketball and football, are cash cows for the universities.
Right.
They deliver huge sums of money to the university coffers, and the kids are getting nothing out of it except a college degree, provided they get the college degree. Many of them.
And some of them do not get a college degree. I know for a fact
many of them don't. Some schools have a graduation rate of 0.
Right.
0.
I know. I heard one story one time about a top-ranked college player, and he attended a certain school. I don't remember the school. I don't remember the name of the player, but he graduated, or I shouldn't say he graduated. He attended that school for 4 years, played 4 years of college basketball, never received his diploma, and I don't think he even went to class.
Wow. That's just an embarrassment. It's a slur on the face of college sports, and I love college basketball. I love college football, but what's going on, or what has been going on, is just outrageous. You have the national champions in college basketball, University of North Carolina, and the NCAA has been investigating academic fraud for what seems like forever at that school.
Right.
Now, how can they be the national champions? Why aren't they on probation? Why aren't they barred from the tournament? I was told, they're still investigating. How long does an investigation take? It takes me an hour or so to write a story. It shouldn't take 10 years to investigate a scandal.
Well, Hal, one thing, and this, we're talking, where Tony is and where I am and yourself, you're East Coast. But a few years ago, of all schools to be put on probation was Brown University. Now, to me, that is totally ludicrous when you have the North Carolinas of the world with all these investigations with professors changing the grades, other people, going out and taking the courses and exams for the players, and yet an academic Ivy League institution like Brown gets put on probation.
It shows you where they're investigating whom they're not investigating, and they got to spend time investigating somebody, but Brown couldn't buy him off.
No, and not only couldn't buy them off, but there's no money involved when you're talking about North Carolina being a national champion and being on the Final Four and all the millions of dollars that come in from that. You know, you never get that at Brown.
Right, absolutely not.
Sure.
And what gets me, you mentioned Ivy League. I mean,
right.
This is the corruption is countrywide, worldwide. The way every industry, the insurance industry, the real estate industry, lawyers, it's corrupt. What has become of the fiber of America, really, without being corny, or was it always that way?
Well, I can tell you this from my point of view, and my point of view doesn't extend further back than the 1970s when I was in the business, but I mean, I can tell you that the money involved was a lot less, but there was still money. And I know that certain players and I know that certain coaches, I'm not saying they're abused and it was just a fact of life, but it was not criminal. Now this investigation is a criminal investigation. And, you know, I'm
at the
personally,
FBI.
Yeah, I'm happy to see it because I think maybe it's going to start to trickle down. They're going to say, hey, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We got to see what's going on here.
And there are people who know, a lot of people who know, people in power who know. You can't tell me that athletic directors and presidents of the universities don't know that this is going on. I mean,
they do know. Hal, they do know. I can tell you for a fact.
They have to know.
Right.
In most big-time colleges, the athletic department is totally separate from the rest of the university.
Okay. Well, they are, Alan, and if you look at some of the major schools, like a major football school, and I'm not going to name names because I can't really say for sure, but I know that certain major college football programs fund the entire athletic program at a certain school.
Well, that's always the thing at UConn because everybody points to the women or the men, and and the issue we're having now in the state is we are the state without a budget, and we may collapse come Saturday. That's that's entirely not related to sports. In as much as the fact of whenever UConn cries for funding, it's like, well, show us UConn the money that you're making. UConn never wants to show anything other than these inflated statistics. But all of that said, when the coaches like Gino Auriemma makes $2 million a year, that's a lot of money for coaching, women on a basketball team, and it's the whole thing of. I mean, I love sports just as much as you guys do, or just as much as the next guy, but it starts to get to a point where it's. I mean, how could I put it? It's to the detriment of other things when we're just propping up these programs, and of course you throw money at them, and they're going to.
Hello?
Sure.
Hello?
Did we lose you, Tony?
No, I'm
Tony.
here.
Oh, okay, good.
Go
All
ahead.
I was saying is everything these days is so out of proportion.
Right.
Well, I think Tony, and look, I'm not going to take sides as far as what's going on, but I can tell you that Gino, if he's making $2 million, there's not a professor at UConn making anywhere near that kind of money.
For certain, yeah.
Right.
That's the problem.
He is the highest paid state employee because all the salaries are disclosed.
Right.
No, Ben Howland, the basketball coach, when he was coaching at UCLA, was the highest paid public servant, quote unquote, in the state of California.
Whoa.
Yeah, well, it is. It's what they call this is an arms race. In other words, it's you got to spend money to make money, and if a coach has got to be paid X amount of dollars, that's what you're going to be paid to keep him. Or if a school is going to have to build new facilities to attract recruits, I mean, there's no end in sight to it unless somebody at some point blows the whistle and say, "Hey, this has to stop."
But
this scandal bring in Congress and have them investigate the NCAA, NCAA.
That'll never happen.
I'll tell you a little story. As you guys know, I went to New York University, And there was a time when NYU was a big-time basketball school.
That's correct.
And there came a time when they dropped the sport. And there came a time when influential alumni pressured the university to restore basketball. We wanted basketball back. And the president of the university at that time said, yeah, okay, you want basketball back? That's fine. We'll bring it back. Division III. And that's where NYU plays these days, in Division III. No scholarships, no big money, and it's just a low-key program. And it is what it is, you know. But universities are supposed to function as academic institutions to educate students. And for what we were just saying, for coaches to be the highest paid employees, not only in the university, but in the whole darn state, that's a scandal. That's unbelievable. That's unacceptable.
It certainly is. But you know how the excuse is always, well, it's because of the basketball that we could fund lacrosse, or we could fund rowing, or we can fund basket weaving, or whatever. And I'm not demeaning these other
women's
activities.
sports, Prop 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with that, but I can also tell you that in my opinion, it's out of control. And
I agree.
You know, those schools at the top level, like I said before, it's an arms race, because for them to compete, a Division I program in the top 10 in football, there's a top 10 in basketball, they have to compete by spending huge amounts of money and being reimbursed by, whether it be shoe companies, apparel companies, whatever, for the amount of money that they're requesting, and that's what helps fund those programs. If you have, you know, if you look at, say, University of Michigan's football stadium, it seats 100,000 plus. Well, you know, I can tell you, when they sell that out every football game, all those proceeds are being funneled back into the athletic program, and they're going to fund the other sports. But on the other hand, you've got Jim Harbaugh, and you've got that program, the NCAA, you know, is making millions of dollars in advertising funds coming back to the organization because the University of Michigan football.
And TV money as well.
Huge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
You have the Big Ten Network. You have CBS or ABC or NBC, whoever it is, has a contract. I think Notre Dame had a contract with NBC for all their football games.
Years,
I mean,
yes.
Yeah, I mean the amount of money is just, it just blows your mind. And but it's the kind of society we're in. When you look at Major League Baseball players or NBA basketball players, multimillionaires playing a game, with the teams that clubs are owned by billionaires.
Right. Speaking of which, let's do a little segue before we get on to the topic of the day, which is the 1961 era New York Giants defensive line, and starting with Mr. Robustelli, of course. But I just want to go around the panel and get your reaction. Pro or con, doesn't matter. It's not a political show. The national anthem, standing up, sitting down, taking the team to the locker room like the Steelers did. So, speaking of that, I'll start with Al Blumkin. What's your take on the whole Michigan?
I saw that start during the Vietnam era. I went to tons of ball games in the late 60s and early baseball games in the late 60s and early 70s. And when the public opinion started to turn on Vietnam, that's when certain people I know decided to sit down or not participate in the playing of the national anthem. And also, this did not become a regular thing at ball games until World War II. It was only used on special occasions like July 4th and Memorial Day and Opening Day prior to the Second World War. And,
at this time, do you think it would be prudent if they stopped playing the song?
There's one guy quoted years ago saying he owns a butcher shop. He says he has to play the national anthem every day and every morning when he opens his shop. But basically also you can blame the sports because sports, especially NFL, has wrapped itself into the flag from the get-go.
But that's what I mean. The owners are basically defending at this point, these multi-billion-dollar worth owners are taking a stand to come up and taking the players' freedom.
Yeah, but basically, if a bunch of these a number of season ticket holders say they're not going to go because they can't deal with, they can't support this anymore, there'll be plenty of people to replace them.
Yeah, that's true in some cities.
Yeah.
Others are feeling a shock. San Francisco just
5,000 people
built a new ballpark.
You see the Jets play every weekend. Yeah, they stink most of the time. I mean, it's not attendance is not going to be a problem in most places.
Right. Hal, what's your take on the standing up, sitting down controversy?
Well, this started a year ago when Colin Kaepernick, the quarterback for the 49ers at the time, decided to protest racial injustice in America. What? There's a racial injustice in America? I'm shocked. I never would have thought it. So that was his personal protest. It had nothing to do with the flag. It had nothing to do with the song. It was his moment to have people pay attention to him, and his message was, hey, America, wake up. You're not dealing properly with all your people. And to me, that's an appropriate message. Now, for that to be extended to the way it was over the weekend with the president, I thought was foolishness. It had nothing to do with the flag. And I thought the Dallas Cowboys handled it very well. They kneeled, they took a knee, but when they played the Star Spangled Banner, they stood up and they linked arms. So they showed the solidarity by taking a knee and by linking arms, but they also showed respect for the flag by standing. And by the way, when you go to your next sports event, you will hear the public address announcer before the game say, ladies and gentlemen, please stand, remove your hats, and listen to whoever is singing the Star Spangled Banner.
We honor America.
To honor America. That's right. And it's always a message of stand. So I understand putting that together, 1 and 1 makes 2, but the original concept and the original complaint of Kaepernick had nothing to do with the flag. It had to do with how Americans were treating minorities.
Well, Trump kind of blew it all out of proportion by his remarks about the protesters and their right to do it, and using profanity and this, that, and the other thing. George Case, your take.
All right. Well, my take, I happen to agree with Hal, and as far as I know, over the years, and what Alan mentioned, I think it did start around World War II. With the national anthem being played before games, and I mean, I always stood. I think everybody I've always seen, stand, take your hat off. It was just part of the tradition and part of your respect for your country. But I agree with Hal. I think what Kaepernick started was really talking about the racial thing, and now all of a sudden it's become wrapped around the flag, and I personally don't like it. I do think that the Cowboys handled it well with Jerry Jones. He got right down there, and they all, took a knee, and then afterwards they stood arm to arm, and they did the national anthem. So I'm ambivalent. I understand the protest, but I don't like the idea of disrespecting the flag of the United States and all the sacrifice that went into defending that flag over the years.
Okay, Al?
Yeah.
Your take, please.
No, I gave mine. I just want to say one thing. It's I think this whole thing is the caused by the present occupant of the White House, who, as far as I'm concerned, has never given a damn about anybody except him and his cronies.
Okay. Tony De Angelo.
Salesman.
Well, I am of the belief that, protest is a right we have as Americans. We can protest. We do have the First Amendment. We can go out and we can talk about things that are on our minds, and we can have civil discourse. The reason is because people fought and died and paid for that right with their lives and their bodies and their well-being for us to live in a free country. That said, I think we should protest what troubles us, but yet I think we should also, regardless of who we are, give respect to the fact that we live in a country where we can do this. And I think protest is great, but I mean, on a Sunday we can't give thanks to the fact that we can walk into a stadium, a beautiful facility, and see a game with the most talented people on earth playing. I just think the whole issue is so confused. And I agree with Hal, and I agree with George. I think people are now protesting. I don't even think they know what they're protesting, other than the fact that they hate Trump. Well, line forms to the right.
How about the right to protest itself? Trump's trying to take away the right to protest, and there can be a protest against him taking away the right to protest.
Well, I wrote this today. There is something called the First Amendment to the Constitution. The Constitution, which Donald Trump pledged to preserve and defend.
Protect and defend, yeah.
Right, on Inauguration Day. So he's got to know that there's the right of free speech in this country. That said, he has a habit, and it's not accidental, of throwing red meat to his base. And to me, that whole speech was contrived to rev up his followers in Alabama. And it's a phony issue. It's not a legitimate issue. There's no disrespect of the flag. Ask Colin Kaepernick what he was complaining about, and he'll tell you it's got to do with racial conditions in this country. It's not disrespecting the flag.
Right. That's very, very well put. Hey, guys, let's get on to talking about the theme. I invited Tony specifically, not knowing how valuable his input would be on this, because
you already know that.
No, this just kind of came up. But I invited Tony specifically because he is from the same town as Mr. Robustelli, and I want to talk about those four terrific ball players: Andy Robustelli, Modulewski, Katkavage, and Greer, the other three. Mm-hmm. But we'll start with Andy. He was the oldest, and I learned today from Tony that he wasn't originally a New York Giant. He was drafted by
a Los Angeles Ram.
Wow.
He played 5 years
new
with them.
to me.
Played 5 years with them.
Yeah. And came to the Giants, and I mean, in our town, he was Mr. Robustelli. He ran the sporting goods company. He had a partner, and they did all of the uniforms and the trophies and the jackets, and he was at every single Little League banquet, Babe Ruth banquet. He was a very good speaker. He was incredibly funny and down to earth. He was a warm-hearted guy, he had his hand in many things. He was very financially successful. He ran a very back in the days when there were travel agencies, he ran a very profitable travel agency. He was one of the first people in the state to have a cable TV franchise when, such things pretty much were, monopolies in their day. I mean, they're monopolies still, but they're monopolies in different forms. And he was he was one of the founding partners of Toyota of Stamford back in the day when Toyota was this little, what a laugh, made in Japan car. And think about what that was worth when he sold it years later. But just an all-around, good community guy. Had a large family. I played baseball briefly with his son Bob, who Bob was at UConn for a while, and Bob was the quarterback. This is back before UConn was big-time football. And to us, he was Mr. Robustelli, and I've never, ever heard anybody say a bad thing about him. He was just, he was a staple of the community, but yet he was, just a Italian guy from Stanford, like so many of us.
Also, later general manager of the Giants,
and not really successful in that endeavor. Hal, you're right.
No, but that was downtime for the team.
He didn't do
well.
First
time I ever heard of him knew about him was from one of his football cards as a Los Angeles Ram way back when.
Wow.
Does Arnold College Does Arnold College still exist?
Yeah, of sorts. I think it merged with the University of Bridgeport. It does not exist anymore in Milford, Connecticut. That much I can assure you.
Okay, number 81. I actually saw him play basketball in the Garden because before a Knick game I went to, I think this was after the sudden death game, they brought some of the Giants in to play, it was essentially a pickup game.
Yeah.
Because of their newfound celebrity, and Mr. Robustelli was among them.
Wow. Oh, those kind of things went on back then.
Yeah, they basically showed that they were better off sticking to football.
Yeah, I mean, they did these things to support their football.
Yeah, it was a fun thing, and everybody who saw it really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of that going on. I remember when I was playing, we had a benefit game against the Philadelphia Eagles football team. And, we beat them. We're a bunch of ragtag, guys, just playing for the fun of it. And here we go out and play the Eagles. I mean, that wasn't their sport, but they came, fans came to watch them. And just like Tony and Alan, you mentioned about the Steelers and whatever it is, but that's what the players used to do in the off season. They'd make some.
Georgia, I wonder if Chuck Bednarik was among those.
No, I could tell you he wasn't. Concrete Charlie was not there.
No.
Thank God.
Concrete Charlie was an instructor at the camp I went to, Kittatinny Camp, summer camp. My father always had a hard time with that. They're sending him to the camps. He never quite caught on, but Chuck was a weekend instructor up there, and Chuck could hike a ball further than most of the campers. Probably all of the campers and some of the counselors hike a ball 40, 50 yards. And he was such a personable guy, and he gets such a bad rap with hitting Frank Gifford. He stood over him, and it looked like he was taunting Gifford. He wasn't. He was celebrating the play, which was a clean play. So
you should point out he was a World War II hero. He was I believe he was a fighter pilot.
Right, exactly.
And
really,
he came back to play football. The last two-way player in the NFL, played both offense and defense, and he was a hell of a man. And
you mentioned Ralph. You mentioned the fact about Bednarik and with Frank Gifford. I mean, and you're talking about the '61 Giants. That hit was in 1960, and it caused Gifford to miss the entire '61 season.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, and he came back. He was so rummy that he married Kathy Lee.
Yeah, he also played. He played What's now known as a wide receiver the last 2 years, 62 and 63, after he came back. He wasn't a running back anymore.
He was a
yes, that's right. He was they had a new position. They called them flanker backs.
Flanker backs, yeah.
And they put him out where he couldn't get hurt.
Yeah.
He was a versatile player.
Yeah.
He was a backup quarterback for the Giants.
He was all pro his rookie year as a defensive back.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't realize that.
Up. Yeah.
Came from a
USC.
city in
USC came
in
from.
California, Bakersfield,
USC.
California.
Yeah.
He was a hard-working guy, though, as a broadcaster. From what I understand, for the Monday night games, he would get a stack of index cards, and on every single card, he would write the player's name, his number, his position, his school, and some little obscure fact that he picked up. And he would go in the hotel room and he'd lock himself in the room, and he'd arrange the cards on the bed in offensive and defensive formations, and he'd practice calls on what he would say if a player made a tackle or if a player completed a pass. And he worked and he worked and he worked and he worked. I listened, there's a lot of things where you shake your head at the guy, but I give him that. He was an extremely hard-working guy that wasn't like a jock coming on the air with a microphone. He worked very hard to be a broadcaster. I think Kyle Rote there was kind of an inspiration for him.
Yeah, and I think wasn't Kyle Rote was a couple years ahead of Gifford, I believe, wasn't he?
Yeah, he used to do the sports, George. I think Hal remember on NBC in New York, like the 6 and 11 o'clock news.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Right. Now I'm curious about one thing, Tony, and you would know. You talked about Andy Robustelli. I'm assuming that the Giants were the local fan favorite in Stamford because of the proximity to New York City, right?
Well, it's an interesting thing, George, and I'm so happy you brought that up. I would say prior to the AFL or the maturity of the AFL, which was really centered around Namath kind of ascending to the Jets, right, which was, and Hal would remember, it was called, the new breed of...
You there, Lloyd?
Hey. Excuse me, Tony. We're interrupted. We have a guest who's new. He's the newest member of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. He does a show, and I'm going to introduce him to you guys. He does a show called Lenny Randle's Hot Corner. Number 11. How are you, sir?
I am blessed with no stress, and I'm not taking any mess.
Good evening, Lenny.
We hope not.
Hi.
I want to introduce you to Tony De Angelo is here. He's the godfather of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. So I'm glad he's here to give you a welcome. Hal Bock is former Associated Press head baseball writer, retired for 40 years, still does a column. Hal Bock is
I was
here.
there the night you blew the ball fair or foul. I don't recall which.
I want to reintroduce you to Al Blumkin. Al Blumkin is on our panel tonight, and you were with him on the Peter Golenbach show on this network a while back, and you called him a genius. You just, under your breath, you just said, this guy knows everything, and you understated.
We discussed Lenny being back when the 1977 blackout hit here.
That's right.
Man, you guys have great memories.
Yes, none more than Hal and Al, and George too. George Case III. I'd like you to meet Lenny Randle. George is the son of George Case Jr., who was a major league outfielder from 1937 to 1947, and you've met us all. And
I'm happy to talk to you, Lenny, and we certainly have a background in baseball together. My dad was playing a few years before you did, obviously, but always enjoy watching you play and looking forward to your conversation.
I'll tell you one thing. I got a musician, in case things get out of hand, named Lloyd Lopez, who's related some kind of way to Jay Lopez and George Lopez. So don't hold that against him.
Okay. Well, welcome to our
Lloyd
show.
is a Lloyd is a conspired jazz phenomenon sponsored by Japanese horns, and he will have an input from Kobe Bryant to the NFL. So what's the latest thing in music? And he wants them to play former Marine now. Former Marine wants Oh Beautiful and Cool in the Game to open up the NFL.
Well, Lenny, you were late, but I got to ask you for your take on all this national anthem stuff going on, sitting, standing, taking it to the locker room. Just your take on it is all.
Okay, I've been kind of a blessed kid, like birth, a captain or co-captain of the team. When things get out of hand, I try to make people laugh. If this thing gets too crazy, I would love for Cool in the Game and Oh Beautiful sung by Bon Jovi or Bruce Springsteen or America sung by Neil Diamond. Come on, guys, let's loosen up here. I'm kind of the guy that if we played Oh Beautiful every day.
We can change the song and see if that works.
Or just have everybody stand in the dugout till it's over, and the whole football team stand in the locker room till it's over, and then come out. Let the fans have their moment like a prayer, and then the song, and then stay in the clubhouse, stay in the dugout, stay in the wherever the golf course, whoever's protesting. Just keep everybody's butt in the room, and then let them out like lions and cattle and bears.
All right. Lenny,
I'm a little out of the box, guys. I'm sorry.
I understand, but during this show, we are honoring the 61 era New York football giants defensive lines. And we just talked about Andy Robustelli. The next one I want to talk about is Rosie Greer. And I want to ask you, because, Lenny, you know everybody in the whole world.
Robustelli sold me my car, and Rosie Greer let me date his sister. So what do I got to do?
You mean Rosie Greer had the indiscretion? Was that indiscreet that he would let you?
Listen, Lloyd Lopez could be attested. Remember when Rosie Greer sang a song, Lloyd? Remember the song he sang with the Rams?
Yeah.
Rosie Greer used to be a singer and an awesome foursome. He also had a daughter who was with William, the guy Hitman, Hammer. And her name was Pam Grier. And she was in all those blockbuster movies with, a woman swinging with a 45 and a woman with a bayonet and a woman with a remember those movies, those Spike kind of movies where the woman always had a gun? Who's your sister kind of blockbusters? Well, Pam Grier was an actress, and she was Rosie Greer's sister. Rosie Greer and they were related. A lot of people don't know that. She was like a hot, way before Beyonce, baby. I mean, she was a hottie. And she didn't even know how hot she was. Guys, I'm not making this up. She had 52-inch breasts, okay?
Well,
and then she had a gun.
And a bad back. I'm guessing she had a bad back.
She had a very bad back. It was a lot of pressure on her to keep herself, not tilted over. But she was a bad mamma jamma. She was really a great actress as well. And Rosie was a great singer. You guys know that? Did you know Rosie Greer? And he also protected President Kennedy.
And Bobby Kennedy, he was there.
And Bobby Kennedy.
When Sirhan was killed.
He also did a movie with Ray Milland called The Thing with Two Heads.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Ray
Hal, you know this stuff.
Remember, he used to show it on WOR Channel 9.
Yeah, it was a really bad horror movie.
Finishing up a ball.
Ray Milland, with Ray Milland, they were attached to the same body, and Ray Milland was a white racist, and Rosie was Rosie. It was pretty bad.
Well,
years and years ago.
You guys got to remember how you and Nell and Lloyd, you know this. I'm not saying you guys are old, but you remember Art Linkletter, and you remember the Ed Sullivan Show? Well, they only had one take, guys. They couldn't do two takes. They couldn't afford two takes. So it was just one take. That was it.
So that's how TV was in those days.
Yeah, one take, and you get it or you don't. Now, you guys have all been on TV, am I right? Everybody?
Yeah.
Well, I've been on cable TV. Hal, I don't know if Hal's been on TV.
No. Not that I can recall.
Hal Bock certainly has been on TV over the years. Don't know about George.
Yeah,
You're the TV man, Lenny. We're the radio guys.
Yeah, but radio's now on TV. Look at all the guys got TV radio shows. Mike and Mike. Come on, they're doing radio on TV. Mike and Mike. Come on.
I know, but Mike and Mike can't say what we say. They can't talk like we talk. We're in the podcast. Internet radio is the incredible media of our times, and it gives us the opportunity to produce it in a way that no one has produced this kind of stuff before. And
Lloyd,
yeah.
Lloyd can get us on TV. He has his own network. He has his own video company. Lloyd, we could produce this show and make it a live TV episode while we're on radio. This is doable. This
do you
is
guys, right now, are you doing live streaming while you do your podcast?
No, I put it on an MP3 and I post it within a few hours of the show being recorded.
Oh, yeah. I have a radio station, too, an internet radio station called smoothradio.biz. It's been around since internet radio started way back when, and we were doing live video at the same time. We would stream video right over it. You could do a lot of different things back then, and of course things started to change as Live 360 came out and everybody was doing their live internet radio, and it kind of changed because then they started saying, hey, well, you can't play this kind of music and do that kind of stuff without, paying BMI, which is right. You can't, so they slowly started dying away. But there's a lot of them like Jazz Cafe. They're growing and growing, and they get bigger every day. But yeah, things have changed, and internet radio is a great way to reach out around the world and get new audiences. And and then now this Facebook Live, you can go Facebook Live. I think 99.1 does that every day. They've got Facebook Live while they're doing their broadcast every day, and that's commercial radio right there. I think K-Prog owns
And
them.
here's another thing I do with this network. Every show that we do, we archive on YouTube. So
yeah, that's great.
Hours after posting it. And the one thing, all these stations, all these websites that hold podcasts, eventually they're going to either fold, years later, or fold. YouTube will always be here. So what we're doing is preserving stuff for future generations and give them an idea of the truth, because no one speaks the truth more than the podcasters on Comfortably Zoned Radio.
Ralph, where does George and Hal live? Where do you guys live? And what country? Where do you guys live?
No, I live in Pennsylvania, and Hal lives.
I live on Long Island,
New York, or Long Island. Yeah.
I'm in New York.
Okay, so so we're gonna have to do the show in Vegas or a neutral spot like Ohio.
So you could just send the equipment to all of our individual homes, so we don't have to go anywhere, Lenny.
That's a good idea. We could do like Michael Jackson did with the simulcast, right?
Absolutely. Let us,
right.
We're all old people. We don't all travel well. We don't all want to travel. And so when we get to 60 minutes, I want you to arrange to have all the podcasters flown out in first-class style to Alameda. We'll do the thing 60 minutes. Now, Oprah's with 60 Minutes now. We'll get her involved. We'll put a baseball cap on Oprah's head. And it'll be great.
I'll make that happen. 60 Minutes would be awesome. I just need to know one or two things. First of all, George and Hal, you guys don't wear makeup, right?
A lot.
I got to wear makeup just not to scare Tally. I wake up 3 hours early. She sleeps, and I get ready to present myself because I'm an old guy. I don't know about George. George retains youth. If you look at his,
I don't know about that, but the fact is, I got to shave every day. Ralph, I know you don't, but I do. If I shave in the morning, I got to shave at night.
Of carving up my face like I used to do in the old days. That was fun.
I tell you what was fun, guys. I used to dive back to first base, and I got Steve Garvey makeup on my head. I couldn't figure that out.
Shaving is funny. You started at 14 years old, but then when you have to do it every day, it becomes a big pain.
Absolutely. That first Norelco shaver was great until the hair started growing back into my face, and it put me in touch with my roots.
On that subject, guys, I got to know, Lloyd, because you're a musician. You know, Kenny G, you guys are clean shaven. And I don't know if George is clean shaven or Hal. But you guys like the new beard look, like the Rockies player. You don't know if he's a rock star, a truck driver, or hunting deer.
No. I got to try to keep it clean.
Well, I can't tell the players from the players and the guys duck hunting. I can't anymore.
Okay. Hey, we're running short on time. I want the two defensive linemen we didn't mention. Big Mo. There was a Big Mo and a Little Mo.
He was Little Mo. He was Little Mo.
Well, they blocked for Fran Tarkenton. Didn't they block for Fran Tarkenton?
Oh, they played defensive line for the Giants. And Dick Marchaleski's older brother, Ed Marchaleski, was Big Mo. He came up before Dick, and he was running back for the Cleveland Browns, who preceded some guy who turned out to be pretty good, named Jimmy.
Named James, Yeah.
Now, I learned something. I learned that the other day from Alan, and I always assumed that Jimmy Brown came right after Marion Motley.
No, there was a gap there.
Okay.
They had
I appreciate
Ed
that.
Marchaleski and another guy named Maurice Bassett, and when Jim Brown came along in 1957, the other two were forgotten about very quickly.
Wasn't Night Train Lane in that backfield as well?
Night Train Lane was a defensive back.
With Detroit.
Okay, but he went both ways, didn't he?
With the Rams, his 14 interception season with the Rams, and he went to the Cardinals and to the Lions.
Okay.
Those guys
don't try to get anything by Alan, but I will say that Night Train Lane's real claim to fame was that he married Dinah Washington, who sang
he did.
What a Difference a Day Makes. Yeah. She was terrific.
Yeah.
God rest both their souls, as a matter of fact.
Oh, my God.
Hal, your memories of Mo and/or Catkavage?
Absolutely. Marchaleski was a terrific defensive tackle, and Catkavage played the end, I think, right?
Yeah, right. He played the other end.
Yeah. I mean, that line, that defensive line, became the hallmark of Giant football in that era. And of course, Sam Huff, also the linebacker. Suddenly, the defense was the thing people wanted to watch, and people got excited about. Right. And there was Giants championships.
I don't
were
know.
They as popular as the
linebacker? They had a few linebackers. Cliff Livingston.
Yes. Colin Safari was the other one, the third one.
Yeah, the third one. Exactly.
Yeah.
And one day I'm watching Name That Tune, and Cliff Livingston, it was either on it or was sitting in the audience of Name That Tune. And I'm like 10 years old, 9 years old. And that was pretty cool. It was great growing up in New York.
Ralph, one of the things about Catkavage is he was hurt about midway through the season in 1960, and he was out for the rest of the season. And that really hurt them that season. That was the only year from between 1958 and 1963 that they didn't win the Eastern Division. Of course, they lost their championship games, but that's another story for another time.
Okay. Hey, guys.
Didn't Lombardi kind of copy that defense? Did Lombardi copy that defense?
He was the offensive coordinator for the Giants, and Tom Landry was the defensive coordinator. And Lombardi left after 1958 to go to Green Bay, and Landry left after 59 to go to Dallas. And so they made Allie Sherman the head coach. And that's another story.
Wow.
Well, Ali Sherman had the best sportscast show. He had a giant tutorial on Tuesday nights, and he had a chalkboard thing where he would break down in simple terms.
Channel 11 in New York. I remember watching it.
Yeah.
It was really well done, and he'd have a guest. His guest would be a player. I remember Darrell Dess was on once or twice, and you get to see, how it worked, how the offense was set up, and it was great being a kid. That's why New York fans are the most well-educated. It comes from the media and the exposure.
Couldn't they though? Well, couldn't they like take Tebow and help Eli Manning so he won't get hit, so he could run a little bit? Wouldn't that help the Giants' offense if they got Tebow?
It would help Manning if he was 10 years younger.
Yeah, that would help run a lot of the offensive line.
Right.
I mean, because everybody does a shotgun kind of thing now. What Manning doesn't. They know he's not going to run. But if they could just mix in a little, I mean, even Reed changed a little bit to go with today.
They can't protect Manning as well as they have in the past. There's problems on the offensive line. So at least that's what they say in the papers here. Yeah.
Well, what do you think it's the line? Or do you think he needs to be more mobile, like
I think it's a combination.
90% of everybody else?
The man is 36. The Tom Brady's and go on forever are very few and far between.
Very good point. But, hey, Brady, the week he had last week,
oh, God, man,
numbers he put up there at age 36, he reminds me of, old guys, Kittle, Blanda, very few that could do it well into their 30s. And he is. I grew up out, I spent time out here when the 49ers, the Montana Young era.
Mm-hmm.
I think Brady, at this point, can we all agree he's probably the best quarterback that ever lived?
No.
Well, let me say this.
But I'll give you Johnny Unitas. I'll give you Otto Graham. I'll give you Sid Luckman. There's a lot of great quarterbacks down the road that I can name.
Bart Starr.
Sure. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them.
Bobby Lane.
But look at the championships this guy is accumulating.
They're different eras also.
Yeah.
It's a different game that's played today.
That's true.
So, no,
like
I don't. I acknowledge that Brady is a great quarterback. But the greatest ever, I have a little problem with that.
Okay. Would you say top 3 is Namath up there in the top 5?
Top 5, maybe top 10, maybe not top 5.
Okay. Would you say Peyton Manning top 10?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Would you say now? Got to work with me now. We got Aaron and Rodgers and we got Wilson. Which one would you take? You got a runner and a drop back, and every now and then, Aaron will run if needed.
Well,
I love Aaron Rodgers.
He pulled that game out Sunday that they had absolutely no business winning, even though they were playing the Bengals.
Okay, now I'm getting tricky. Bart Starr or Staubach?
I have a special place in my heart for Roger Staubach. You know why? Because he always returns phone calls. He always calls back, and that goes a long way for a sports writer.
Yeah.
Well, the military helped him as well. That was a big plus for him.
Yes, it did.
Absolutely. Yes, it did. Yeah. God, when he first came to Dallas, they were alternating him with Craig Morton. You believe that?
Wow.
First year or two.
It was hard for Landry to give up that power. That's why. Cause
I know. Yeah.
I think any guy that's military is a threat to an owner. Am I right, Lloyd?
This has been terrific. We're running up against the clock. As usual, delighted that you guys can join me and on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And we just talk ball and life. Pretty good. Anything I'm leaving out? Anything any of you guys want to conclude your thoughts on? start.
Well, I know I enjoyed it. I've got to run, so I wanted to say good night to everybody, and thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Yeah,
Alan, would you like to say anything that you haven't?
No, I just wanted to tell you that I'm doing the next Pittsburgh podcast with David Finoli tomorrow night.
You got to have Bruno Sammartino on him. He's as much Pittsburgh as anybody.
I know, yeah. We're not quite ready for that yet.
He could tell us how real wrestling is.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It'll be a while before Alan does wrestling, but you never know what the future will hold.
I'm going to bring on Damani Dawson and Conspire Jazz next show, guys. So be ready for that Pittsburgh.
All of you guys, I want you to. Lenny has consented that every morning at 9 o'clock Pacific, which is high noon Eastern, Lenny's going to hold court on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. So if you guys call this number anytime, 9 o'clock, any day, 9 o'clock, we'll get to talk to Lenny about Lenny Randle's World. He has a show called Lenny Randle's Hot Corner on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And believe me, we've been doing this a couple of weeks. Every day, Lenny talks to the most interesting. He's gone coast to coast with his camps. He brings on the most interesting folks on the planet. That's the only thing I can tell you. You're really special, Lenny. We appreciate it. Hal, don't want to sell you short. Are there any thoughts that you'd like to complete?
Only that it's a pleasure to have Lenny along for the ride. I enjoy
Hal, you're my new daddy, Hal. You're my daddy, Hal. Who's your daddy?
Friend each other on Facebook, and I just want to thank Tony, my godfather, who without Tony De Angelo and basically all you guys, there would be no network, no Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. So happy you're my bud, Tony, and
my pleasure, and happy to have Lenny aboard.
Beautiful.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Call the open forum on at 9 o'clock. Let's just say weekdays. We'll hold it to weekdays, and because I know we can count on that. And
I got to run, guys.
Panel when and if you can,
everybody.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night,
thank you, gentlemen. Be well, and listening audience, what a treat. Keep on keeping on. Be well.
Good night, all.
Arrivederci. Ciao, ciao.